Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Tamarind Robinson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Edward Haynes.
Thanks for joining on a whim last minute.
Yeah, no worries. I think you thought I was joking when I was like, I'll join.
I genuinely thought you were taking the piss. That's why I responded with a take the piss answer. And then you were actually like, oh, you don't want me? I was like, oh, no, I'd actually 100% take you. Basically, folks, I was about to record a solo episode. And then Tammy offered literally last minute saying, would you like me to be a part of it? And I was like, yeah, would always much rather a conversation than a solo episode.
And here we are.
We are here today to talk about something that we talked about as a team together on Monday. We watched a TED Talk. So we do book club, which is sometimes called podcast club, which is sometimes called TED Talk club. And we basically read a chapter of a book or listen to a podcast or watch a video. And we basically have this group conversation about it. And we hadn't had a good one in a while, I feel, as a team. We started a book and kind of liked it. It was very disjointed. We had a few breaks. Yeah, we just didn't build the consistency that you need to if you start a book. And then we kind of just decided 2 weeks ago, all right, let's scrap this. It's a great book, by the way. It's Change Makers. We talk about it all the time. We actually have read it as a team before. So instead we said, let's go with something a little more lighthearted, something more digestible. And I put forward the video. If you haven't watched it, it's called How to Speak So That People Want to Listen. It's a TED Talk by a guy called Julian Treasure. I had just listened to him on Diary of a CEO. He was interviewed by, what is his name? Not Simon, Stephen. That's it, Stephen. He had interviewed him. It was a really interesting conversation. I think it's in the top 5 most downloaded or watched TED Talks ever. It's only 9 minutes.
Wow.
But I thought it was quite interesting. We had a really good conversation as a team about it. And specifically, the conversation starts by talking about the 7 sins of communication and what those are. It's gossiping, judging, negativity, complaining, excuses, lying, and dogmatism. Yeah. We had a really good debate and kind of just shared experiences as a team. I guess some of us had felt like this had been a part of us and our identity at some point. How we feel when we see it in others, and what we do when we see it, this thing, whatever it is, in a social situation, whether it's in a group or in a one-on-one setting. So it was a really cool conversation. And then what Julian goes on to talk about is an acronym called H.A.I.L, which stands for be honest, be authentic, have integrity, and love. And I think that was a really interesting part of the conversation too. And that's what I'd like to actually talk about today. In this conversation, Tam, I'd love to hear your thoughts on each of these. We'll kind of go through them, starting with honesty. If it's been something that's always been a part of you, is there something you've had to work on? Have you worked with other people who are striving to have honesty be integrated as a part of their lives? Strategies, tips, I don't know, anything. So firstly, before we get into this, what did you think of the video?
I thought the video was really cool. I guess I was in a place in life where I was resonating a lot with what he had said. And I think I'm in a reflective state now where I can be like, oh yeah, all the things that you're saying and that acronym makes sense for why I feel the way that I feel right now and how I have connection with other people. I think if you had got me to listen to that same podcast, maybe like, I would say 3 to 5 years ago, I would have had some takeaways, but not as much. And yeah, it was just a really great point of conversation to even go through those 7 sins of communication, because as a group, as a collective, we all have such different views and opinions of what those things even mean and how we, I guess, deal with those things in day-to-day life as well. So yeah, if anything, it was just a great point of conversation, which is, I guess, why we're having this conversation today.
Yeah, and there's no right or wrongs. It's just sharing of experiences and stories. Well, let's just dig into that acronym then.
Sure.
H.A.I.L. The first one is the concept of honesty. So when I think about honesty, obviously I look at our 6 values on the wall, and honesty is the very first one. Be honest and be humble. Yeah. And so this is personally for me, probably I would say one of my most important values. So that's something that I hold very close to myself, and it's something that I think is very important in another person. In, I guess, like any form of relationship, whether it's like a professional relationship, it's a partner or a spouse, it's my family, friendships. And when I look around the people I think are closest to me now in my life, honesty is something that's super consistent amongst all of them.
Yeah.
And when there's a break in honesty, or when someone is not being honest, I feel that has a really big impact on my perception of that person or our relationship. It kind of knocks me down a few pegs immediately, and it takes a bit of time for that person to build that back up again.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts when you think about honesty?
I completely agree with that. I think, I wasn't always a very honest person, and I've become an extremely honest person. Not to say that I feel like I was just this terrible person that like lied all the time, but I think growing up I was really different and I wanted to fit in, and I think that I told these stories and fabricated the truth a little bit to make myself feel more important and to make myself fit in certain scenarios. And
have you got any examples? Because I'm exactly the same. I shared a few examples with the team, and I could literally see the team like jaws drop, being like, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. But I'd love to hear like what were some examples, or like times in your life where you felt like it might have been more prevalent.
Yeah, where I did that. I think, oh man, it would have started like really young, like when I was a kid at school, and like, I don't know, for like certain sporting things to like go out and play sport at a different thing. Maybe I like shared the story differently of how things went, or I don't know, like hanging out with a guy that I was trying to impress. I might have said certain things about myself to make myself seem more interesting at the time. I think speaking about maybe my partners, not now, but like when I was younger, speaking about my partners to other people, I think I used to like
pop them up
a little bit more than they should have had, to make them sound like they were a better person. Or I don't know. I can't think of like a specific example that I thought about, but I just know that is the way that I would communicate, and it was what I naturally would lean towards. Which is something I think that I've really consciously worked hard not to do anymore. What about you? You think?
Yeah, I think genuinely I would not be honest if it was an opportunity to give myself an advantage. Is the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
So if that was storytelling, like I would embellish the truth a little bit, pump up the story. I think this is a Haynes trait, because my dad does it all the time. Aunt does it all the time.
I was like, your dad.
I sometimes do it still. But you chuck in a little, like when the punchline doesn't hit as hard as you want it, you're like, fuck it, let's throw another punchline in there. Let's completely pull that up in thin air. So I guess it's like storytelling. I think a lot of it was to do with like wanting to be liked and to be popular.
Yeah.
So if that was in a friendship context, it would be like twisting the truth to make me fit in with the group, and whatever the context was. I would do that a lot. And I guess this is all just like, it's essentially a form of people pleasing. Yeah. Right. It was like me not being my authentic self, in the hope that by being this other person, I would be liked more. And I guess this is like a fear of loneliness, or perhaps stems from like a fear of not being included.
For sure.
A fear of perception that I wasn't the cool person, certainly like in younger years. So that's what, like, there were great, I think way back, like as a kid, there was one time when I was going through this phase of like, it was almost like an identity crisis in primary school, where I would change. When people would ask me where I was from, I would change. I'd be English 1 minute, I'd be from Hong Kong the next, I'd be Australian the next. And there was one time where I had a teacher when I was like primary 3 or primary 4 ask me, where are your parents from? And I just said, I still remember, I said Australia. And as I said it, I was like, why did I just say it? That's ridiculous. I'd just been to Australia and I thought it was a really cool country. Yeah. And I had like this amazing holiday with my family. So I was like, I'm going to be Australian next year. And then at parents' evening, probably like a couple of months later, my dad came home and was like, why are you telling your teacher that you're Australian? And I was like, I don't know.
Aren't we somewhere down the line?
I can't tell you. But that's like a poignant something that stuck with me since I was probably like the age of 8.
Yeah.
And just I can really always feel it in that friendship group scenario, or in a social circle. Yeah. Where it would be not quite telling the truth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Wanting to be liked and wanting to fit in, and telling the story that makes you fit in with that, even if it is just a small deviation from the truth or a large deviation from the truth. It was always the fear of not being liked.
When I think about it now, because, you know, we're on this ongoing journey. Some people call it like a healing journey, right? At the moment you realize that, okay, I want to change, or I need to change something. And for me, that was like reading a lot of books, doing a lot of my own research. You know, I didn't really venture out and reach out for therapists. Didn't have people I could really speak to. I felt like in my friendship group and in my social circles, I was kind of like the only one at this point in time going down this route. So I kind of like, I buried my head in books and podcasts to learn about it. But when I started to think about the concept of honesty, I then started to reflect back on the years of dishonesty in my life. And it started, every time I would think about times in my life where I had done it, it would like trigger this feeling inside me, which was, I can't describe it any other way than it was like your stomach knotting up, feeling like what I'm about to say is not right. It doesn't feel good. And then being so not at ease when I say it.
Got you.
Do you know what I mean? And it was like when I started to like connect those dots, thinking back of the past and like all these time I'd been dishonest and how I felt in the moment, I started to then recognize as I got older, you know, so in the last 5 years, when I would maybe tell like a little white lie. And, you know, there's always this moment, the second before you're about to say it, where I would get that knotted feeling in my stomach again, to be like, this, my body doesn't want me to say this, but I'm going to push it out and say it anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the response that would happen from that, like sweaty palms, like I'm sure like a little flash of red in my face, like it was like embarrassment.
No eye contact.
Yeah, no eye contact. Exactly, like agitation.
Yeah.
And a spike in heart rate. And it wasn't until I was like, you know, going through this journey and trying to like, I became very hyper aware of all these times where my body would pull me out of, let's call it homeostasis. It would pull me out of like feeling good.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, what's pulled me out of that moment there? And it would be like, oh, well, Ed, you just told a little white lie. Yeah. And like, clearly that wasn't comfortable for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, as we're having this conversation, like more and more is kind of coming up with this. I think a lot of the change journey that I've been on and this healing process that I've been on is being honest with myself. I think that's been the biggest realization, that I had created these stories for myself that so often and for so long that's what I thought my truth was. And when I started digging, I was like, I've been lying to myself. Like that was the biggest turning point, I think, in my entire journey to realize that. How
did you get to a point where you called yourself out essentially and was like, you're lying to yourself? Maybe there wasn't a point. Was it like a series of points?
You're right. I think, you know, we've had this conversation before, is like, we always kind of see ourselves as like the protagonist of the story, that we're the hero and we're doing really well. But there comes a point where my circumstances around me aren't changing and they're consistent. I'm the only thing that, sorry, my wrong terminology is there. I'm the only thing that's consistent, right? Like I'm the common denominator in all of these scenarios. So maybe it's me, you know, and it wasn't a nice realization to come to, because then when I started to think in that way, it's like, okay, like that is a really tough and challenging thing to go through by yourself or for yourself, because it's like you've been telling yourself that everything else is to blame, and now you have all this heat coming back at you, and it's like, well, I have to change.
Is there a moment like one of those that you can recall?
One of the biggest ones for me was when I came back from my trip from Mexico. I was definitely having a bit of a, I guess, existential crisis, where I was like, I genuinely don't know what I'm doing. Like my relationship is good, but is it enough? Like my work is good, but is it enough? Is it really what I want to be doing? Is Hong Kong where I want to be? Like, do I want to go and like travel the world and just be this free nomadic spirit that just gets to do what she wants when she wants? Like, yes, work is good, but like I could definitely do something by myself and be really successful with it. Like I had all these thoughts that I was just so uncertain of what I wanted. And I think I started to realize that I was I just very much had a grass is greener on the other side mentality. And a lot of people speak of quarantine being something that was really negative for them and they didn't enjoy it. And there were parts of quarantine that I didn't enjoy, but it was because of the uncomfortable situations I was in with myself, that I had a moment, 2 weeks, to just reflect and look in the mirror and realize that I didn't like what I saw, and realize that I had a lot of work to do to create a life for myself that I have now, which I'm starting to reap the benefits of. But, you know, before I went on this journey, I really wasn't happy. You know, I would come to work and do my day-to-day job, and everything was like, I would check the box, but there was something that was left that was really empty. And when I went traveling and when I did all this other stuff, like I felt invigorated. I felt really excited and I enjoyed the feeling. And I think the biggest realization was that it wasn't the travel that was making me feel that way. I was just being honest with myself. I was just being me in all those situations. I was expressing my truth and what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I needed to, like, I don't know, have any preconceived ideas of what people thought of me. Or, you know, I think because I was in my head so much in Hong Kong, I started to be like, well, I don't know if my team really likes me. I don't know if I'm really valued. I don't know if the work that I'm doing is really good. I don't know, blah, like, I don't know. I just had so many question marks. And I never really put enough time and effort into the people around me. I never really put enough time and effort into myself. And I was sorry, this is a really long answer. I was constantly seeking, external things to make me feel good. So if Ant takes me on a date once a month, like, that's going to make me feel good. If I go and explore Hong Kong, that's going to make me feel good. If I have success with a client, that's going to make me feel good. But it was such a temporary fix to what was actually going on, where I was obviously just not in a good place and I wasn't very happy. And I was the root cause of that unhappiness because I hadn't stopped to reflect and think about my actions and who I am and who I want to project and who I want to be. So yeah, that was kind of my change journey. Sorry, that was a lot.
What was it though in that quarantine period that suddenly made, you know, like, was a connection of the dots, you know?
I think it was the conversations that I was having with people around me. I think as a person, naturally, I'm quite open, or I try to be quite open. I'm very curious, inquisitive. I ask a lot of questions. So because of that, I was asking so many questions I didn't have answers to. And I was really lucky to have people in my life like you and, you know, my parents and some other friends that I've connected with across the globe to just bounce my ideas off, whether that was just to hear me vent and just like be like, this is what I'm going through and I have no idea what it means. Like, what is life and what does it mean? But I think that a lot of the times those people had some really great points to be like, okay, like, I'm hearing everything that you're saying. Maybe you need to reflect more about X, Y, Z, but I think you need to think about you. I think you need to think about, like, is the grass really going to be greener on the other side? Because you seem to have moved countries a lot of times. Have you always felt the same way that you have felt? So they started, without being like, it's you, they started making me think about the fact that it could have been me. And when they started to highlight that and they sent through podcasts or readings to go over, it really started to open my eyes. And it's one of those scenarios where it's, again, like, if I had read those things before, I just would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. But I think because I was like, wow, this is really resonating and these things really make sense right now, it made me kind of keep digging a little bit deeper. So I think, does that answer the question?
Yeah. But I mean, before that moment in time, I guess you had people in your life that could have been those people, but perhaps you just weren't at a point in your life where you wanted to maybe hear it or even ask the questions that you asked me. You know, where you were looking for not necessarily an answer, but whether it was venting or it was getting something off your chest. And I guess essentially the intention being like, need to try and find a solution here somehow. I don't know how it's going to happen, but perhaps were you not at a point in your life before that where you were seeking that, or I think the questions just got different? Yeah,
I think the questions just came from a different place. It wasn't so inward. It was very outward. I don't think that I'd put the pieces of the puzzle together, or if those people were giving me those same cues, I didn't take them that way. I maybe just was like, well, that wasn't that great advice. So like, maybe I'll try the next person and see what they have to say and see if this kind of helps me on my journey. That's a really tough question to answer. I don't know how to answer it.
Well, I'm trying to think about myself. It's like, I think to be honest with yourself, which is what we're talking about, which is like, you know, honesty with yourself was like the catalyst to then allow for a lot of change to happen. It's like, there are other things that have to be in place to allow you to start even being honest with yourself. I think like even one like introspection, like up until my late 20s, I just wasn't introspective at all. I was so concerned with life around me. Maybe it was pleasing people, maybe it was the image that I was giving off to the world, my business, my training, that I wasn't ever like sitting still to just think about me, or listen to the thoughts. And, think about what was happening. I always say, like, they use the term, I was literally just sleepwalking through life. I think that's one. Then like I look at these values on the wall, like another big part of it is like you have to have a growth mindset. I was very much at a point where I would literally just think that this is just the way I am. I was brought into the world as this person. Like, I'm a product of my parents giving birth to me, and therefore, like, I am what I am, and I always will be what I'm going to be. Whereas the growth mindset will say, like, you can challenge that. Like, we can all change, we can all evolve. Yes, there are some things that will be you forever, your genetics, your DNA, but there's so much that you can actually change. And as soon as I understood that concept, that changed everything, because I was like, okay, actually, no, I can change. Like, it's within my power to do it. Like, also, when I think about ownership, I talk about ownership all the time, which was, before I started to embrace the concept of I have the ability to control everything in my own life. So I guess the opposite to taking ownership would be putting blame on others. Not accepting responsibility. And when, that means when things don't go your way, you always have an excuse, and there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. Whereas taking ownership is taking it at such an extreme view, which is what I did. And I still do, I think, where something happens in my life or around me in my life. And so what could I have done to make that outcome different? And you can almost always trace it back to something. Sometimes it gets too far-fetched. You're like, okay, well, that's just ridiculous. But it's like you'll often find there is always something you can do, and that's actually quite a liberating feeling, because it's you could have actually done something better here. So like this is a chance to grow and learn if you don't want this thing to happen again. So I feel like there's integral parts to me that had to be there before I could even start being honest with myself.
I completely agree with that. I think, a lot of the things that probably acted as a catalyst were things like our book clubs, being able to be open and be vulnerable and to explore different readings and podcasts and things that we listened to that provoked thoughts, but maybe I hadn't really implemented it into my life at that stage, but definitely like hung somewhere where when something happened and it did resonate, I was like, oh, we've read something about this. Hearing people speak about their change journeys, like watching Ant, watching a few of the other people in the team. I don't know. I guess like retracing back, it definitely goes back to moving from being a competitive athlete to not. That was like my biggest and hardest change in life. I've spoken about it before, like Mike Malloy from M2 Performance Nutrition, for me, acted as a really good mentor. I don't even think he knows how much of a pivotal role he's played in my life, where he introduced me to the idea of self-development. Like, I knew that people like worked on themselves, but I had no idea what that even meant. Like, what do you mean? Like, do I just sit here and like think? Like, I didn't even know, what thoughts do I even think? So it was good for him, because he sent me some things and opened the door to things like, motivational speakers on YouTube, or little passages to read, or things like that, which obviously opened up a whole new avenue of a way to look at life and other perspectives from people to hear. And I think at the time it was all just a little bit of words to me. I didn't really apply it, but I think with each learning and with each year and with each challenge that's come my way, I've been able to implement some of the learnings. And once that has happened, that stuff has really stuck. And I agree with you entirely. It's about having a growth mindset. It's a willingness to know that you have the power to make change. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's actually super hard, and it's really hard to not go back to old habits, but your actions, your thoughts, your behaviors, the things that you do on a day-to-day basis govern how you feel. And by recognizing that I have the power and I have the ability to create a positive world around me, has made life so enjoyable. It doesn't matter where I am now, whether I'm sitting in the office in Hong Kong, stuck in like my apartment for quarantine, while I have COVID, whatever it is, I can always look at life from a glass half full. Whereas I think before, I definitely would have been much more negative and had the opposite outlook.
I think, like you said, the word vulnerability, and I think that for me is like that's one of the top 3 things that's really changed my life, I think. And vulnerability is like myself being vulnerable as well, which has really helped with the honesty piece, because that's kind of what we're still talking about here. Because it's like, I wouldn't be vulnerable because I couldn't even be honest with myself in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So I would hold back what I was really feeling, because if I said it out loud, well, that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate admittance or like acceptance of something. And so I wouldn't share my struggles, because me keeping them inside would mean that even me keeping them inside, I wasn't dealing with them. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, for me, really truly feeling like I'm dealing with something or making progress on it is actually saying it out loud. And I've always just felt like that. You know, like struggles in my life, whenever I've had relationship problems or hard decisions to make, I've always been someone who goes to people close to me to project and say like, what do you think? Like, I kind of need help on it. And I think, what was holding me back, I've never actually put it this way, just kind of like coming to me as I'm saying it. But why I would hold back like the deepest, darkest things, or the things I felt like I was struggling with, was because actually I hadn't even come close to accepting in myself on the inside that I couldn't possibly put them out onto others. But I do find that, vulnerability is such an amazing thing. It's firstly like witnessing vulnerability in others is inspiring to me, because it makes me see someone else being so comfortable with themselves and being so open. Is kind of like, why can't I do that? I want to also be like that, because that looks freeing and that looks liberating.
Sure.
Those people they're not afraid of judgment or anything. They're just so comfortable in their own skin. Is always what I could have told you that from like a young age, that the people who shared everything just looked really comfortable in their own skin, and that was admirable. That was something I wanted somehow. And as well, like, I guess like, when I'm in a situation where there is 2 people and I'm one of them, or more than people, and there is an air of vulnerability where people are just sharing openly, there is always this like deeper rooted connection that happens. Like, I'll always leave those conversations or those social interactions feeling like I've connected that individual on a deeper level, and I want to see them again in some way, shape or form.
I couldn't agree more with that. It's just a very wholesome experience. And I think something you touched on there was like, you from a young age realized people who were honest with themselves and their feelings, and their ability to be vulnerable was something that you were drawn towards. I think it ties in to the next part of the acronym, which is authenticity. I shared this in the team meeting the other day, but my friends that I've met across the globe are a very eclectic group of people. Like, if I was to put them in a room, you'd be like, what? How are these people friends? But I think what I didn't realize is that the people that I'm most drawn to in life, and the people that I see as being cool, my, I guess, subconscious standard was people who were authentic, people who were just themselves through and through, no matter what situation, no matter what group, no matter whatever you put them in, that person was going to be just them.
Fuck, it's a hard one. I mean, this is what my original podcast was going to be all about, authenticity. Because there's so much to talk about there.
There is.
And it's like, when you think, when you define what authenticity is, which is like just being who you truly are without fear of judgment, and just being that person. It sounds really easy. But if I think back to my life, like, there was just so many points in life, primary school, secondary school, university, rugby days, early days, like with CrossFit, owning a business, where I genuinely just didn't know who I was. And subconsciously, I think I was trying to find who I was. And in trying to find who I was being all these different people. I look back on it now, and it's easy to be like, oh, well, I was clearly people pleasing, or I just I cared more about popularity. I wanted to have an image of myself. But actually, like, I don't know if that really was the case, back then. I think part of it was just trying to find out who I was, realizing, didn't like that person. I don't want to be that person. Something about this person doesn't resonate with me. Something about this person really does resonate with me. How can I have more of that in me and in my life? And I would say now, I'm about to turn 35 in a couple of months.
Oh my God.
And I know, fuck off. But like, I genuinely feel that, when people say like life gets better as you age, I genuinely feel that. And like, every year after 30 has just gotten better and better and better, because I just feel like I'm closer and closer and closer to being genuinely authentic. And I guess what my authentic self is going to look like is going to continue to change and evolve probably until the day I die. But I guess what authenticity really means is like whoever that person is at that point in time, like you're just owning it.
Yeah.
You know, and you're portraying that person in every walk of life. Doesn't matter who you're speaking to, where you are. And what's so nice about it is going back to honesty, which is like, you know, when you get those feelings where your stomach goes into a knot and you get this like flush of sweat and heat and the heart rate bumps up. They don't have that shit anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like on any platform.
Yeah.
Even on Instagram, like, I can genuinely say anything and not fear about what people are going to say about it. And it's very freeing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like even being on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a platform where I really don't hold back on anything. I actually was on a podcast not that long ago and they asked me like, what is one naked truth about you that no one knows?
Right. None.
I literally sat there like, because she'd asked me this question before the podcast, said, make sure you come prepared. And I completely forgot. And she sprung it in the podcast live. And I was like, I'm really sorry. I literally cannot think of anything because I feel like there is really, and I started just thinking about like, I don't know, should I describe my genitals or something? Because that's genuinely what I was thinking. Like, that's probably the only thing the world hasn't really seen, but maybe should I? And I was like, I'm really sorry. Like, honestly, I feel like there's nothing I really don't share.
Yeah.
I'm finding it really hard to answer this question. So we had to literally do like a stop, Ed, think of something, come back. And I said something, but I didn't really believe it.
So you lied.
I lied, yeah.
You were dishonest.
It was kind of honest. But, you know, like, I also think that's just, it's a really nice place to be.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, what you said is so true. Like, life is an experiment. We're totally just trying to figure things out. And for some people, it takes them longer. For some people, it's shorter. And it's ever changing. And that's what's beautiful about it. It would become boring if it wasn't, you know. You do have to go through this trial and error period where you hang out with a certain bunch of people and you're like, are these the kind of people that I want to hang around? You don't know what your belief system is because half the time when you're growing up, it's kind of forced on you. You know, I grew up in a really religious family and I went to a Christian school and that was kind of my bubble. And then finished school and I was like, whoa, there's like a whole world out here that's like entirely different. And it was very interesting to try and navigate life. And like, there were principles from what I learned growing up that it was like, be a good person and be honest and be humble, those sorts of things that I carried forward from religion. Not to necessarily say that's what I kept, but you know, there were other things that I was like, well, you know, now I'm older, I have the choice to kind of discover whether or not those things really do align with me. And I think, you know, being authentic is so difficult because who are we? You know, it's really hard in life to not get fixated on tying ourselves up to the labels that we give ourselves. You know, I can definitely see myself doing that. Like I said, one of the hardest journeys was becoming not an athlete. And then I was like, oh, well, now I've just put on my hat as a coach or, you know, Tammy, the nutrition and lifestyle person. But more recently, I've been trying to change the way that I introduce myself and try to change the language around it, where it's very much, you know, I'm a really caring person. I like to serve others. I like to speak the truth, you know, all those sorts of things so that eventually in life, because it's going to happen, my titles are going to be stripped of me, but I'm still that person that still cares for people and still wants to serve others and still likes to study and like learn new things and be creative. So yeah, I guess for me, this entire journey has been discovering who I am, and I love who I am right now. You know, like it rings true to a lot of the values and things that I said before, but I don't think I really aligned with it. Whereas now my values and my belief system are the person who I am through and through. And like you said, super invigorating, very freeing feeling. And every now and then I catch myself and I'm not doing that. And then that's when I feel at angst feeling and like really uncomfortable. But we're always reminded that this is what it feels like to feel good when I'm honest, when I'm authentic.
Yeah, I just posted about this the other day. And it's like we wear masks for so much of our life. Yeah. And I literally can think back to times in my life where I'd literally be thinking, right, who am I about to see in the next 2 hours? What mask do I need to wear? Yeah. And I wouldn't think about it as you know, I wouldn't think about it in that sense, but looking back, that's essentially what I was doing. And it would just be, okay, time with that group is now done. Now, where do I go next? And what mask do I need to wear? And like how tiring of a process that is, how fatiguing it is, and to now not have to think about that anymore, and to know that it doesn't matter where I am or who I'm with, like I am at the core going to be the same person. And we both listened to this podcast a while ago, And I remember we talked about it. We were sat right there in the office, and we both pulled out the same quote from it, which was the concept of liberation and transformation.
Yeah.
I still think about it all the time. And, there's in finding your authentic self, it can be liberation is basically like wiping the fog off the mirror, and the person that was always there, you can now see clearly.
Yeah.
And then transformation is actually like, just transforming yourself, letting go of something that once was to now embracing that something now is. And I've definitely been a combination of both of those things. There's been much of me that was like, I can think back to childhood where I had really great qualities that were just naturally in me. I don't know why or how they came there. And then for maybe a 10-year period, they kind of disappeared amongst like being cool or playing sport or trying to be liked by people. And then now at 35, they've kind of shown themselves again as I put work into myself. And there's been other aspects that I've really had to actually work on, which actually weren't a part of me ever. And I saw it as an aspirational value or belief that I saw in the others around me, that I wanted to make that a part of me, and I'd have to work really hard to now make that a part of me. But not to say any of those two things was easier than the other.
No.
Like, it is all taken a tremendous amount of work. And like you said, like there are still times where I get caught out. There are times where I questioned these values. I think I've added more to these values now. Other things that have come along the journey that I'm like, I actually really believe in that as well. I don't want that to be a part of it. And there's certainly, for me, it's like familiar environments. The moment I go back into an old environment where there was a former self wearing one of those masks, that's
like your rugby gang.
Like my rugby gang, for example.
Okay.
Like you go back into that environment where you're around those people in the same place on the rugby field, and suddenly you've got all these memories. Our body's amazing at like storing memories, and the crazy thing is that our brains can't determine whether the thing you're thinking about right now is something that happened 25 years ago, or is it happening right now. And that's the crazy thing about like past traumas and experiences. Like our body holds on to them, stores them everywhere. And it's when I go back into those situations, that's where I really have to challenge myself, because I feel myself getting pulled back to the times when I was wearing a mask. And now to be like, no, stay strong to who you are, means like taking a second longer to respond sometimes, or to sharing what I feel about something that maybe in the past I would have just agreed with because it's easier to just agree and be one of the gang, to potentially now thinking differently. That's where I really feel challenged.
Yeah, I can understand that entirely. I think as well, it's like, there's almost an unsaid thing or I think something we haven't really spoken about, is how powerful it is to have people in your life that see that potential in you and stay around for it and encourage you to grow and help you to grow on that process. You've been one of those people for me, for sure. Where I guess the whole concept of liberation, it's like, they could already kind of see through that glass, and they'd already kind of like wiped away the fog, but we couldn't see it just yet. And they enabled us to, like a good gardener, grow into our potential.
It's so funny you just mentioned gardener, because it's literally what I wanted to talk about, which is something you said earlier, which I wrote down, which is a concept of the grass is greener. And I know this isn't I guess it kind of does fall under authenticity, but it also kind of falls into honesty as well. And this has been something that like I've struggled with my whole life, which is like this concept of the grass is greener. And the more I think about it, the more I think like, well, our world is set up to make us always think the grass is greener. Advertising and promotions, companies market to basically tell you that what you have or what you are is not enough, and you need to get this thing instead. Social media does that, without
reels.
Exactly. It makes you constantly thinking that what you're doing, what you look like, and what your life looks like is not enough, and you need more. So it's no surprise that it's massively ingrained in us, especially probably in our generation. If I think back to like my parents' generation, where like there wasn't social media, what you knew in life was the things right in front of you in your little town, your little village. Like you probably didn't have that mindset.
How old are your parents?
I'm thinking about my parents. Dad did grow up in a little village for a bit. So like I can totally see why that is. And then you come across quotes and statements which are like, the grass is not always greener, you need to water your side of the grass if you want it to grow. I think about this quote a lot because it's something I've really tried to work on, I guess. It's like my understanding of where does this come from, where does this from me, like this wanting something else or thinking that something else is going to provide the outcome that I'm not currently experiencing. And it is a tough one because sometimes the grass is actually greener. sometimes the grass isn't green and actually you have it in front of you. You just need to invest more time,
Mm.
energy, love into that thing. But I guess kind of where I'm at with that statement right now on the grass is always greener is like, we all have probably like a cutoff point where, okay, I've done all that I can or all that I'm willing to do by watering the grass on my side now. If I'm not achieving the outcome that I want, maybe I need to explore the other side.
For sure.
When I think about a younger Ed, the younger Ed wouldn't even water his side of the grass. And I would just jump straight to the other side.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would pay off favorably and it'd be like, I knew it. Sometimes it wouldn't. But I think where I'm at now is like, we've just got to make that decision. Like, and some of us are very patient individuals that are willing to put lots of time and energy into something in the hope that it will change. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Some of us don't have that patience. And I think where I generally am now is that in the people closest to me, like I'd much rather invest time and be patient.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it can take years. But that's something that's really changed in me, I think, over the years. Before I wouldn't have probably had any patience. In the moment I would have seen, a hint of misalignment, I would just be like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, actually, talking on that, if you don't mind me sharing your journey, I've obviously seen it kind of evolve over the last few years. And there was definitely a point, I think, where I remember definitively you just had found, I guess, on your change journey and where you had gotten to at that stage, you were like, none of my friends aligned with me. Like, this is it. This is the end. And one by one, you kind of like gave them the boot. And then obviously you grew a little bit more and you're like, wait, no, like there are still things we connect on. Like we still have things that we share and things that are common. Doesn't mean I can't ever hang out with this person. I'll just distribute my time differently. Yeah. I'll be more patient. And you've seen kind of like their full circle as well with like other aspects of their life. Yeah. So.
I've actually had the conversations with all of them. The people I had those conversations with, basically that's a perfect example. Yeah. Was like, we don't align, you're out. Yeah. I'm moving on and finding a new set of friends, basically. When really like what I could have done was actually just invested more time into them. On their journeys, explaining, not even to try and change them, but just to explain where I'm at and what I needed from them. Because I had changed and I hadn't communicated that. That's the ownership part from my end. Again, I realized I actually hadn't given our friendship a chance to flourish because I hadn't done everything within my power. So instead I just walked away from the situation, and really what I should have done is stuck with it. I knew that these people are important to me, and that's why they're still my friends now. So, investing more time and being more patient with it probably could have achieved a different outcome in the end. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
It's all right.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Would you say you live your life majority of the time being authentic now?
I don't know why I'm thinking about it so much because I feel as though I do, but I'm like, what if Ed's perspective is different?
I think you do.
I think I'm quite honest with myself and the people around me. I think what I've started to notice is that the more honest I am with myself and those around me, the more open my communication is, the more vulnerable I am, the more I actually just do the things that I want to do and speak up when I'm doing those things, not to feel like I need to give people an explanation, just to state it. I've eliminated any of the doubts and concerns and the perceptions that I had had of other people judging me for those certain decisions. So an example that I can give, I think previously for me, I've enjoyed team training, but I always sometimes wanted my own time, because sometimes for me, training is my time. And I think before, with my work schedule and all the things, I used to stress out, and then team training became something I began to resent because I was like, I'm now having to do this rather than I get to do this. And a simple message now where it's like, I have a day like today, hey guys, like I'm feeling a little bit tired, I'm not going to join in. Before I used to be like I just have to do it. And then I would obviously become angry and like not enjoy the experience at all. But now I'm very open with you guys, and it's like, hey, my schedule, like I have a really big workshop coming up. Like when I have the energy to train with you guys, I will. And if it suits my schedule to jump into a class and just be told what to do, that's what I'm going to do. no one's even batted an eyelid. Like, if anything, I've been supported through it, right?
Yeah, we're all like, awesome. That's so good that you know what you want.
Literally. And it's just changed my entire perspective. Like, there is no longer that resent. It's like, I just am doing what I need to do, and people support what I need to do. If anything, they're like encouraging what I need to do. And that just has created such a positive outcome from something that I had obviously constructed myself in my head. So
yeah, we suffer so much more in imagination in real life.
It's crazy, isn't it?
But that's honesty with yourself, and then that's honesty with others.
Yeah.
Which I guess is like what we're all striving, we're really all striving towards achieving.
Yeah. And I think even like in our industry, being honest with the people around us, like our clients, like, I don't have all the time in the world. Like, not like that, but just if someone asks for something and you can't do it, I think before I was much more inclined to always say yes, because I was a bit of a people pleaser and I like wanted to do a good job. But now it's like in every aspect of my life, including my relationship, you know, with Ant or the relationships around me, I'm definitely just, this is my truth, and this can be changed if your truth is different and we need to work on it. But yeah, life just feels good. So I do feel like I'm living my authentic truth.
I feel like you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see I mean, I obviously remember those days of the quarantine hotel and your trip away to Mexico very clearly. And just, your journey since then has been pretty amazing to watch.
Well, thanks. Do you feel like you're living your life authentically?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel very much aligned, and I have a lot of clarity. And I am, because I think sometimes you think that you've made it, you know, when you become the authentic self. I mean, like, you become the authentic self and it's like, okay, there's no more work that needs to be done. But it's actually like I'm always asking myself that question. Like, who am I? Who like, am I living authentically? Am I being authentic? I'll often finish every single day and replay every interaction or everything that happened in my entire day, and try to make sure that everything that I did was totally aligned. Wow. And if there is something that wasn't, I'll think about it. Like, why did I do that? Why that didn't feel right, but what didn't feel right about it? Often, like, it's making amends. Like, it's saying to people who perhaps I had even the smallest of engagements with in that day, and I feel like I could have done better, and I wish I'd done better. I will reach out to that person that night to share, you know, how I feel about it, and that, you know, I'm going to work on it type thing, you know. And it's just like that closure at the end of every single day. So it's like, it's something I feel like I work very, very hard on. Yeah. And I'm just constantly, I guess, reviewing and evaluating myself to know if I actually am being authentic.
That's really good. It takes a lot of self-awareness and, like you said, introspection. Is that the right word? Yeah. It's very cool. I think, like, it's just such a big topic. It's hard not to get like wrapped up in it. Should we move on to the next thing?
Let's move on.
Okay,
integrity. So this is the I.
Yes.
Integrity, which is really, it's about being your word.
Yep.
What do you think?
I think it's so important. But I think, like, as we go through all of these, I'm kind of like, well, being authentic is being honest, and having integrity means being authentic and being honest. You know, it kind of...
so it's very intertwined.
Yeah, see them so intertwined.
One of the things I think about quite often is, and I think this is probably where I will sometimes fall short in integrity, is making promises on things that I can't guarantee. So sometimes it's like, it's easy to just say, I'll have that to you tomorrow. Like, classic case, this shit at the end of this office. So we basically, thanks Dad, dumped a bunch of stuff from ownership. Actually did though. He just turned out one day, dumped loads of boxes, which is basically me and Ant's memorabilia from childhood. Totally. It's just
the last 30 years they've been asking them to take it out their house and they didn't do it. So they were like, well, this is the solution.
I thought as a parent, you got to shoulder that responsibility for the rest of your life. Anyway, so they brought in a bunch of boxes. Sorry, I shouldn't have thrown you under the bus there, Dad. And he basically said, you know, sort this out, and we got no more space to store it anymore.
Yep.
And I had said to the team, I will have it done by Friday. Friday went.
Yep.
Came and went, didn't have it done. I then pushed it back to Saturday, and then pushed it back to the following Saturday.
Yep.
And I've essentially made 3 promises there, which I didn't keep. And actually, I knew I wouldn't keep them. but it was an easier thing to say in the moment. It was easier in the moment to say, guys, I haven't done a Saturday, because it shut everyone up.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, that's not the right thing to do, because actually what happened is every time I didn't deliver on it, it pissed everyone else off even more. And it made people.
Why is this shit
and it
still here?
It basically means that now I cannot say anything about messiness. And I know this. I've shot myself in the foot.
Yeah.
So like when people leave shit around, I actually can't say anything, because I'm like, well, my stuff's still at the end of the office. So that's something, I guess it's like, don't keep promises. Don't make promises that you cannot guarantee.
Yeah.
Or that you can't deliver on. I think the quote is, make few promises and keep them all.
Yeah.
That's something I'm really trying to like live by a little bit more now. Even the smallest things, like promising someone that you're going to go, if someone says, do you want to catch up on the weekend?
Yeah.
And you say, yeah, I'd love to catch up. When in your head, you don't really want to catch up.
Yeah.
And it's like, a message is coming your way.
I don't really ever say that.
Yeah, you don't. You're like, thanks for the invite, but no, thank you. Okay, cool. I appreciate it though. I'm like, okay, that's good to know. I don't have to worry about trying to hang out with Tammy this weekend. But that's another thing. You know, it's like, in the moment, it's just easier to make the promise to say yes.
Yeah.
But that's only setting you up for some discomfort down the line. Whereas it's a moment of discomfort, and the discomfort, to be honest, is only what you tell yourself in your head, because it's never actually that bad. I don't want to hang out this weekend. I've got plans. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, totally cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess for me, this is the way I've always thought. I think I really value integrity. I would probably associate it with the word being reliable.
Yeah.
And actions always speak louder than words. As a person, I know that I'm quite observant. And I think, it's very important to follow through on things that you say. And I don't know, I guess maybe because I don't attach emotion to if someone declines an invite to something, that it's a little bit easier for me to be a little bit more honest in those situations and just be like, well, like maybe not this time, but like next time, or I'm quite tired. Like I always know that I'm very honest when it comes to those sorts of things. But, things that you've mentioned made me realize, okay, maybe that I don't have as much integrity as I thought, where I've caught myself a few times because we have a lot of work going on right now. And like, I want to be doing a good job. Maybe you or Izzy are like, hey, can you get this done? And I'm like, yep, have it done tomorrow. And I'm like, I haven't done it.
Yeah.
And I know that I've recently been trying to be like, yes, I'll do it, but I'll let you know when it's done. Yeah. Like I've been trying to change it from, I don't know if I'm like trying to impress you guys or like, I don't know where that comes from.
I'm reflecting on me saying that that's what I do.
Yeah.
And this is something I need to work on. I'm like, Ed, you're essentially people pleasing still.
Yeah.
Without really realizing it. You're not wanting to let that person down in the moment.
Yeah.
So you say yes, because you know that by you saying yes, they're going to think higher of you. When actually, you know that it's not what you want to do. So I'm actually now going back to the question you asked me, like, are you living authentically? And I'm like, oh shit, actually, this is an area. There's still an element of people pleasing in me.
Yeah.
That I feel like I've done a great job on rectifying the majority of it, but it's still clearly something that's popping up every now and then.
But I think that's an important thing. It's like, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. We're all always gonna have work-ons, and being able to now reflect and understand, okay, I thought that this was an area that I had covered, but actually in reflection, I maybe don't. It allows us now to work on it, which is awesome. Yeah.
Let's go to the last one.
Yep.
Love.
Oh, I love this one.
Now, I think love's a strange word for me. I love the word love now, but growing up, love was a word that I used very sparingly.
Did not ever hear it.
I didn't hear it much.
Yeah.
But that's just because my family shows love in very different ways.
They do.
We haven't really been like a words of affirmation family.
Yeah.
I guess you think about the love languages, like we have shown love and like encouragement and showing up for one another in gifts at Christmas. And, everyone just has their ways of showing love. But in my head, I thought love was like saying the word love and expressing it maybe more like physically, because that's what movies show. That's what movies and fairy tales and romantic stories is all about. It's like saying I love you and hugging and kissing. And so, that's something that I've really it's a word that I've questioned a lot. I think back to like romantic relationships, intimate relationships where, I'd use it very sparingly because I thought, there's only one person in your life you can ever say it to. Who are you going to say it to? And they'd be like, how the hell are you going to know that person is until you're dead? I'm like, well, I guess that's when I'll know. I would genuinely say this. Yeah. Whereas like, love can be many shapes and forms in
Yeah.
different aspects of life.
Totally.
But in this acronym and in H.A.I.L, it was basically like wishing them well is what he was talking about with love.
Having like positive regard.
Yeah, positive regard, positive intention.
Yeah.
And this is something like now I really embody the word.
Yeah.
And I use it a lot. Like I probably overly use it.
You're
and I love
your
it.
client. I love you.
Yeah, I love you, man. But no, genuinely, like it's to the point where like when I walk down the street,
Yeah.
and when I step into my lift every morning to go down from my apartment, like I love saying good morning to someone.
Yeah.
And asking them how they're doing and
Yeah.
saying hello to my security guard, even though no one else in my building does it.
Yeah.
I'm like the only person who steps out, and I'm like, Joe-san, good morning, how are you? And there's like 20 people looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
And it's like it feels good. And I'm not doing it because I expect a response,
No.
nor do I want one. And most of the time I probably don't get one, actually, to be honest. But it's just that feeling of like spreading it is a really, really nice feeling.
I totally agree. You know what? I think that growing up, I had a lot of love, and words of affirmation is 100% my love language. Like I love sharing appreciation and telling people how I feel and expressing things. And when I moved to Hong Kong, for me, like something changed. Like going into a really busy city where culturally for me it was quite different. I stand in a lift and everyone turns around and like faces the wall and like looks down at the floor. Like no one says hello. If I walk down the street in Australia, no matter who you walk past, it'd be like, g'day mate, like how's it going? Just have something. I did that here for like the first little bit, and like I got some weird looks.
Yeah.
And then I think hanging around with Mr. Anthony, who isn't always the most positive human alive, I started to like pick up on his like demeanor. Like if something happened, it would be and frustration and like irritation, and like I called myself out on it. I was like, this is not who you are. Like you're someone who, if people are gossiping, you will bring up something positive about that person to kind of like put it to rest. If someone is talking badly about someone, you'll listen, but you don't really want to jump in. It makes you feel uncomfortable. You always try and find the positive to a story, or try and put a positive spin on things, because you want to believe that people have good intentions, and you believe that maybe it's just a bad day for them, or they're going through something. Like try to seek to understand clarity, because you're just making an assumption, and that's not fair. But yeah, I found myself like walking down the street, and if someone like got in my way or did something, I was like, what the fuck? Like I was getting airy, and now I can like you said, it's not to have someone respond in any way, shape or form, but it's like something happens, I'm like, oh, that's all right. Like, like I have a totally different outlook on it.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. I like the last piece. It's like, I heard it on a high performance podcast once, and the guest said she likes to think about killing people with kindness.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Which I think about a lot as well. And it's like, I would probably in the past, like, add anger, frustration, whatever the word, to the situation, versus now it's like, and it's hard, like sometimes the natural thing you want to do is like fight fire with fire, and give them a dose of like their own medicine, or contribute to the thing you're hearing, which is negative. But actually it always feels better just to do the opposite, and to be kind and show some love and put a smile on your face, and I always just kind of I like leaving that situation, whether it's saying good morning to my guard, and I get more pleasure out of thinking, I hope that's helped their day.
Yeah.
I hope I've like given them a bit of goodness in their day.
Yeah.
That is going to contribute towards their life.
Yeah.
And that for me alone sometimes is enough. I'm like, I feel like I've helped someone today.
That's good.
Just by doing that small act of kindness. And I think the other one you said there was like the not judging part. And we just don't know what people are going through. And it's so easy to make a judgment on one action. But like I said, I've had bad days and probably done things that I'm not so proud of in the moment, as big or small as they might be. And I know it's not a reflection of me. And I love the concept of assuming positive intent, API. Again, I can't remember where I heard that from. Maybe it was a Jay Shetty podcast. And I love it. Like I think about assume positive intent always. And whenever someone's speaking ill of someone, or someone's talking bad about something, always just trying to take that stance straight away. Like what might they have been going through? And assuming that it wasn't, because no one's really out there to be nasty and negative and make life terrible for each other. It's just so often down to just a lack of understanding, and a lack of understanding, or seeking to understand, I guess.
For sure. I think all of this as well boils down to like your perceptions, your reality as well. You know, positivity breeds positivity, negativity breeds negativity as well. And I think, you know, the thing that you're describing is it's not necessarily that it makes you feel good that you did a good deed, but instead, because you've had a positive response to a potential stressful situation, the way that you've dealt with that has enabled you to kind of like move forward in life in a positive way.
Yes. Versus carrying that stress with you all day.
Yeah, because I think that you do carry that stress with you because you have one thing that happens. You know, I guess I haven't had a day like this in a long time, but like something bad happens in the day and you're like, well, that's it. The day's fucked. Like everything else now is going to be
just one of those days.
Yeah, just one of those days where it's like totally not like that. I mean, we're definitely going off topic here and it's all about love and being positive about other people.
But that is a good point, because like I love that idea of like it's just one of those days, because I'm just thinking about Limp Bizkit song now. But when you say it's just one of those days, and what starts to happen is that you start to, because what you're doing, you're putting that out into the universe to say this is a bad day.
Yeah.
And then
you look for
you're looking for signs
for
the universe to confirm to you that what I was thinking is in fact true. Yeah. So what you actually start doing is you look for every bad thing in the day versus looking for the goods in the day.
Yeah.
And it is kind of the same thing. It is really about love, because like you just want everything to be bad and to be like, I told you. Fucking told you this is a shit day.
There was like one morning that I can remember that I was like,
did it start by stubbing your toe?
Didn't start by stubbing my toe.
That's how it so often starts.
I like try to be a ninja in the morning because I get up earlier than Ant, and sometimes I start work, but like literally dropped something and it was like everywhere. Then I got in the lift and it like stopped on the 15th floor. It was like out of service. I was like, what? Then I got downstairs and I was riding to work and it was like typhoon. So it was like riding super hard into the wind, got 3/4 of the way to work and got shit on by a bird.
Hey, that's good luck.
Then I was like, it's a sign of good luck. Today's going to be a great day. I was really trying to convince myself that things are going to be positive. But anyway.
Yeah. Tammy, I'm really happy you joined me on this podcast.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was really good. Feels like we were able to have a second session at, you know, discussing that video, which was nice, because I felt like there was so much to say on it.
There is.
And I know we have a lot of these good conversations all the time, because I think we both think about this stuff a lot. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And folks, thank you for listening. And remember, if you haven't watched this video and you have no idea what we're talking about, it's only 9 minutes. Just type in on YouTube how to speak so that people want to listen. His name is Julian Treasure. 9 minutes. If you're like me and you like to listen to on 2 times the playback speed, then it's 4.5 minutes. Even better.
Amazing. Good maths.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.